Welcome to the Mets Pod presented by Verizon. On our debut show, it's predictions time. That's right, we're looking at the team MVP, biggest surprise, bounce back player, of course, a Mets over-under win total projection, and much more. Of course, with opening day right around the corner, we'll get into the latest with Jacob deGrom, some opening day memories, and our famous Mets Pod mailbag. So a reminder, subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 1 of the Mets Pod presented by Verizon. Woo, it feels good to be back. It hasn't been that long, but we're going to have a lot of fun with this show. I'm Connor Rogers. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Joe DeMayo. It is the week of opening day. Finally, it is here. We're going to overlook some potential bad weather. And, man, we're going to get into a lot today. Like we said, we got predictions on today's show. That's going to be the theme of the episode. But of course, we're going to talk a little bit about Jacob deGrom. We're going to go through some opening day memories, and we always got to answer your questions. So, Joe, let's waste no time. It is episode 1. Let's bring you in here. How are we feeling? There's got to be a lot of excitement right now for opening day.
I'm so ready for opening day. I think it's been a crazy last few months here. The Mets had their free agent rush in November when they signed Starling Marte, Eduardo Escobar, Mark Canha, and of course, Max Scherzer, all within basically one weekend. Then we have a 3-month lockout where nothing's happening, a truncated spring training. So it's kind of a year like no other, but just really excited to get going here. And, let's play some ball.
That's right. Episode number 1, couldn't not do it, could not bring it over. Mookie Wilson, the most famous number 1, but there's a lot more in Mets history. Jordany Valdespin, who can forget that one? Ahmed Rosario and Jonathan Villar, the most recent. 35 times or 35 different occasions, number 1 has been worn in Mets history. Joe, I don't think I even have to ask you if you have a favorite number 1. I think we could all say Mookie Wilson is the most legendary. Let's dive right into these predictions, and we'll kick it off with biggest surprise, because I think that's one of our favorite things to always talk about. This is a roster with a ton of turnover, a lot of new faces, a lot of players that we're hoping bounce back from a disappointing season in 2021. Joe, I'll kick this over to you first. Who do you think is going to be the biggest surprise on this roster this year?
I think the biggest surprise is going to be Carlos Carrasco, who pitched pretty well just yesterday. And I'll tell you, he's a guy that when the Mets acquired him from the Indians, we thought he was a number 2, number 3 starter. Maybe that's simply not the case anymore. But I think a lot of Mets fans have kind of dismissed the possibility that Carrasco could be a positive for this club. And, he might fall into the number 4 spot or 5 spot in the rotation. But I think Carrasco is going to have a good year. I expect good health, solid performance. And, I don't think fans are maybe giving him enough credit.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a hopeful one for Mets fans, because a average Carrasco right now gets this rotation where it needs to be, especially with the absence of Jacob deGrom. Cookie's importance significantly rises. I think the biggest surprise for me is somebody that there are expectations because he was handed decent money, 2-year, $20 million deal in free agency. But Eduardo Escobar, for me, Joe, maybe a different player than we're accustomed to seeing in this lineup. Not necessarily the big on-base threat that they've prioritized over the past. We've seen that with Nimmo, obviously signing Canha, even Pete, obviously good on-base kind of player. But with Escobar, this feels like a player that not just his pop in the middle of the lineup can drastically help, but also the versatility in the infield where you have an injury. Can you shift around? Can you play a solid third base? Can you play a solid second base? So I think for Escobar, coming off a huge spring, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people and be a force in this lineup with, let's be real, yes, he had a cup of coffee with Milwaukee last year, but Joe, spending the most recent part of his career in Arizona, a lineup that's been kind of so-so, this can be a great situation for him as well with much protection.
Absolutely. I think Escobar is a very underrated signing that the Mets made this past offseason. He's like a quiet 25 to 30 home run bat, and those don't typically exist. Like, it's just kind of what he does. He has pop. And one thing that the Mets did prioritize, they did this with Starling Marte as well as Mark Canha and obviously Escobar. These are all guys that hit fastballs. And one thing we noticed in the lineup last year was this team struggled. They couldn't hit a fastball, especially a fastball up. the Mets signed 3 guys that crush fastballs. And, all you could do is go look up at Baseball Savant and you could find the stats on Escobar versus fastballs. But if you watch some highlights, you just see him pulling on 95 heat inside and pulling it down the line for a home run. So I think Escobar's quietly definitely a good surprise candidate.
All right, so let's look at bounce back player. This is something that you and I have talked about a lot over the last, I would say, 6 months, especially with the rumors of, are they going to trade Dom? Are they going to trade JD or Jeff McNeil? Is there going to be any kind of turnover there? 3 guys coming off, disappointing seasons compared to their typical standard. And it doesn't have to be one of those 3. Obviously, Carrasco was your biggest surprise. He could have also been bounce back kind of player with the season, the struggles he had last year with injuries and when he returned. Who do you like to bounce back in 2022?
I am going to go with one of those 3. I'm going to go Jeff McNeil. I think he kind of jumps off the page as the obvious bounce back candidate. I mean, he's for his first 3 years in the bigs, let's call it 2.5 because you had the truncated 2020 season, hit over 300 every year. Like, this is a pure hitter that obviously struggled mightily in 2021. He's looked pretty good in spring training. So I think Jeff McNeil's in for a big bounce back year. And you mentioned the versatility a minute ago with Eduardo Escobar. Talk about versatility with Jeff McNeil. I mean, he's going to play a lot of second base, but he's played some right field. He's played some left field, some third base. They're going to have the flexibility to play him all over the diamond. And I think that's a big focus of how Buck Showalter wants to manage his team. I mean, you saw guys play all over the place this spring. So McNeil, to me, I think he comes back in a big way. And you see the Jeff McNeil that, made an all-star team. And, I'm not saying he's necessarily going to compete for a batting title, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if he was back to being a 300 hitter.
And that's all they need. They don't need him to be trying to hit home runs all the time. When you have a lineup that has, obviously, we talked about Escobar, Pete, Lindor. If McNeil can get back to being a get on base, make contact kind of hitter, that would be astronomical for this lineup, whether that's at the top or whether if they hit him at the bottom of the order. I'm looking at the big 3 there as well, and I'm going with Dom Smith. And I think it's unfair to look at Dom and expect 2020 to be the player that he was in the short season where we saw more pop with him, the 993 OPS. I'm not saying that's what Dom is, but last year, a below 700 OPS kind of player, just couldn't get right. He was playing with the shoulder injury as well. And, obviously there's been a lot for Dom, whether it's moving from first base to the outfield, not always having a consistent home. I'm going with Dom as a bounce-back player. I think you look at 2019 for closer to what he is. Can he be a 280 hitter, that 355 on base? Not a 25 home run guy, but can you hit 15 to 20 home runs and be more of a doubles kind of hitter? I think Dom can get back to being that kind of player. And for a Mets team now that there's going to be opportunity, whether it's at DH, whether it is in the corner outfield, whether maybe he does get some reps at first base again when Pete needs a day off or slides into the DH, Dom should be seeing every day at bats. All right, this is kind of a fun one for us. Player to own in fantasy. This doesn't have to be the best player. This doesn't have to be the surefire first or second rounder. This can be a value pick. He could bring value somewhere else. Joe, I have a feeling you might steal my idea here. Where are you going with this one, as we are both avid fantasy baseball players?
Let's see. Was Starling Marte your guy?
At the top of the list, man.
Starling Marte, to me, just fits the mold. I mean, he hits for average. He's got solid on base. Like in my fantasy leagues, we do on base percentage instead of batting average.
Same with us.
So he has some on base skills. He's going to steal bags. Do I think he's going to steal 47 like he did in Oakland? Probably not. But if he can give the Mets 30 steals, I think that's obviously super valuable in fantasy, and he'll pop you 15 or 20 homers too. So to me, I think Starling Marte, I happen to have him on a fantasy team, but I think he is the player to own in fantasy.
All right, and I'll throw one in here. I think Francisco Lindor, for where he's valued at right now, no longer that first or second round kind of pick, but the value of playing shortstop, getting back to the Lindor we know. He's more comfortable in New York right now. We saw a mammoth spring training, of course, from him once again. I think Lindor's in for a really, really big year, and the kind of pop he provides at shortstop, well, probably stealing you maybe 15, 18, 20 bases is huge. But I love your pick with Marte. That's where I was going all along. All right, before we get into the big picture team stuff here, obviously the MVP, the win total, we'll look at the playoffs and all of that. Let's do a couple rapid-fire player-specific ones here, Joe. So we'll be real quick. Scherzer over under 14.5 wins.
I'm going to go over. I think he'll win 15 or 16, so I don't think he's going to win 18 to 20, but I think you'll see him win over 14.5.
I'm with you there, and he's traditionally been over that mark even in recent history. So a healthy Scherzer kind of seems like a lock for 15 wins. Fingers crossed. All right, a little bit of a tougher one here, Joe. Pete Alonso, over under 40.5 home runs. Is he going to get back to closer to that rookie season form, or do you think guys pitch away from him this year?
Call me a glass half full. Call me an optimist. Call me whatever you want. I think Pete's in for a massive power year. He's going over 40.5. I'm going to say he hits 46.
Wow. I like it. I would go with over. I think it'll be really close to a push. I would go around 42, 43 for Pete. I think the reality of it is it's going to be hard to pitch away from him. You can't. And Pete has shown a little bit more of a patient approach. Now he's become a bit of a veteran hitter. He's a guy that's willing to get up there and take his pitches. Guys are going to have to throw to him. There's just too much meat in this lineup right now that you can't be putting Pete on base every single inning. So I'm with you. I think Pete, and we are an optimistic Mets pod. I think we're also a fair pod, but these are the Mets, arguably their two best players that are healthy right now in Scherzer and Pete, in line for huge years. All right, obviously over to a little bit of a tougher one right now. Jacob deGrom over under 15.5 starts. He's going to be shut down for a month. And we know you don't just get shut down for a month and appear back on the Citi Field mound. It's going to take a while to build back up. We've seen a lot of little injuries for deGrom in the first half of last year, and then obviously the elbow in the second half, now the shoulder. Joe, I hate to say it, this seems like a big number. Am I crazy?
I think it is a big number. I'm actually going to go under. I think he's going to start 13 or 14 games, and hopefully he comes back from this healthy, so that way, even if he doesn't start those 15 games in season, hopefully he's good to go for a potential postseason run in September and then into October. So he may be under it for the season, but I don't think that means Jacob deGrom's not going to be a crazy valuable asset for the Mets this year.
Yeah, it's all about him bouncing back. Obviously, 2017 to 2019 made over 30 starts every single season. Short in 2020, 12 starts last year, 15. So for deGrom, I think there's got to be a plan in place this year. If this is a Mets team that can tread water and find their way into postseason contention, get him for the stretch run, so you have that 1-2 going with him and Scherzer, you don't want to push it, especially with that kind of shoulder injury that's stress-related. All right, Francisco Lindor, over under 265 batting average. Obviously, a huge outlier year for Lindor last year, but a much different player after May and then hit by the injury bug. So with Lindor, you got to be careful about, buying in and being afraid of this, Joe. Where are you going? Over under 265.
Oof. I think that's a great number, man.
They know.
They know. Yeah, they know. That's a great number. I think he'll go just over. I think he'll be upper 260s, maybe touch 270. I think a lot of fans, when they acquired Lindor and subsequently paid him $341 million, they thought they were getting this 300 hitter, this Juan Soto type of player. And that's not quite what Lindor is. His value comes in his total skill set. So from a batting average standpoint, I don't think he's going to do much better, but I'll say just over 265.
And I'll go just under. I think he'll be right around 260, but I think with Lindor, more importantly, is the pop at the plate. If he can give you 30 home runs from the shortstop position, still bat 260, get his way on base. We know the kind of wheels he obviously has. He's a good, smart base runner with enough speed to steal bases. I think that number doesn't really scare you too much. Okay, let's get into it, man. Let's talk about this actual team and where they're going to be. We'll go with the over-under win total because that'll take us the rest of the way. Set at 88.5 wins. Joe, are you going over-under? And whichever you do, what is your win number set at?
Slamming that over for over 88.5. I'm going 91 wins. I think they'll be just over a 90 win team. They'll be right smack dab in that playoff hunt, and hit that over.
Yeah, I have them right at 90 wins. And I know this is a number, obviously, that a lot of people might fear right now because of the deGrom news. But I think when you look at everything the Mets, and you and I have talked about this, everything the Mets have done this offseason isn't necessarily full-on insurance for deGrom, but preparing to never be 1 to 2 to 3 injuries away from being a non-contender. This is a team that has been built to have, obviously, a surplus of offense, enough pitching. Even after they signed Scherzer, you went out and traded for Chris Bassett, which in any rotation is traditionally a number 2, right? And now he gets bumped up to being a number 2 with the temporary loss of deGrom. You said it earlier in the show, and I know the spring has been a little rocky, but Carrasco at no point in his career is looked at as a 4 or 5 starter. Taijuan Walker made an all-star team in the first half last year, and I know you and I are quietly pretty big fans of Tylor Megill, especially when you're factoring him in as a flex number 5, not even a written in ink number 5 all the time kind of guy. So this is a team that there's no replacing Jacob deGrom, but there is also no excuses to not be competing for a 90-win total, which leads to the next question. Do they make the playoffs? And if they do, is it as a division winner or a wild card team? This is a division that we've seen really stock up, especially when the lockout ended. We saw the moves the Braves have made. Obviously, Freddie Freeman out the door, but Matt Olson in. That doesn't make anything easier. Philadelphia looks like they just want to mash. They just want to be an all-offense team and leave the defense to the rest. But no doubt about it, this is a competitive division this year.
It is a competitive division, and I made this mistake last year by calling the Mets the division winner. I'm going to say the Mets are going to win a wild card spot. They're not going to win the division. It is the Braves division until it's not the Braves division. But the Mets, like you said, they have the talent to play with the Braves. They certainly have the talent to play with the Phillies. I think the Marlins and the Nationals are kind of a tick below those 3 teams. But the top of the NL East should be super competitive. And I gave them 91 wins. That should be a playoff team. And I think they'll, miss the division by 3 or 4 games. I think the Braves are more of a mid-90s win team, especially when they bring back Ronald Acuna off the ACL. So they're a really, really good team, and the Mets have their work cut out for them to catch up. But I think the Mets are right there as a playoff contender. Just think they'll be playing in the wild card first.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I picked the Braves last year, and it's incredible, even with the injuries, that everything still worked out in their direction. Now, what I'll say is, even with picking the Braves to win the division and agreeing that the Mets will be a wild card team, I think the Mets have constructed this team with the gigantic variable of Jacob deGrom, hopefully being a playoff powerhouse. And what that sense is that you are throwing deGrom or Scherzer in game 1, deGrom or Scherzer in game 2, and then your next guy up is Chris Bassett, and then you flip back, right? Especially in those early series. So as much as this is probably our first time of being a little pessimistic, right, when you're looking at it and saying, it's going to be tough for the Mets to win the division this year, especially with early adversity already, they are the true definition of just get in. Just get in and anything can happen because of the kind of arms that you have when everything is right. And they certainly, we think, have enough offense. And even if they don't, there's a trade deadline for a reason. A trade deadline that was just given a couple extra days into August for a little bit more action this year. All right, so with that being said, we need a team MVP here, obviously. I'm going to throw this one to you first, looking at it. We gave a lot of love, obviously, to Pete, Scherzer, bounce-back players in this with Dom and McNeil. But who do you think is going to be essentially the face of the franchise this season?
I'm going Francisco Lindor. You talked about him just a little bit ago. This is the year that Mets fans realize why the Mets traded for Francisco Lindor, why the Mets paid Francisco Lindor $340 million. You're going to see that power come back. I'm guessing 25, 30 home runs. Like you said, 15, 18, 20 steals, something like that. And defensively, he was the second best defensive player in baseball last year. Not shortstop, period. The only player that was ahead of him was Nicky Lopez from the Kansas City Royals. And this is based on outs above average, which is a defensive metric from Baseball Savant. So Lindor is going to win a Gold Glove. He's going to steal some bags. He's going to hit for pop. The average, like you said, may not be quite there. It's going to, let's just call it in the 260s, something like that. That's a heck of a valuable player. It's probably, a 4 or 5 win player easy. And I think Mets fans are going to fall in love with everything that Francisco Lindor brings to the table. The excitement and everything that he does kind of fell on deaf ears a bit when he couldn't hit the ball at all last year. So I think with him performing better, you will see fans really fall in love. And I think Lindor will be the team MVP.
I'm going to go Pete Alonso here. And I love the Lindor pick because I think there's something to him that's not always valued on a day-by-day basis, and that is defense at shortstop, right? There's not, of course, every fan, he'll make marvelous plays. He'll flash the leather, everything like that. But the consistency of having a glove like that in the middle of your infield at a premium position maybe doesn't get the same glamour all the time as a guy that just mashes absolute moonshot home runs. And that's why I look at Pete Alonso here. I think what we forget about with Pete, because he was an instant star, is that, Joe, he's playing this entire season as a 27-year-old, right? And the best of Pete Alonso is yet to come. Because once again, when you come up, obviously as a 24-year-old rookie, you hit 53 home runs. You've been the consensus home run derby champion at this point, where I don't even know why Pete would enter this year, right? There's nobody that can even come close to beating him at this point. But with Alonso, the amount of protection he has in this lineup, the fact that we've seen a more patient approach to understand when it's okay to take a walk, and living for the big moment, being the bat that you want up in that walk-off situation, while also quietly drastically improving at first base. I think that's one of Pete's biggest motivations, to show I'm not just this big slugger. I don't want to be DHing every day. I like playing in the field. I believe I can be a plus glove. And we don't know if we'll ever get there at first base, but we know that Pete's working towards getting there, and we've seen plenty of positive changes in that direction. So I look at Pete Alonso potentially even as a future captain of this team, which obviously we haven't seen since David Wright, and something we don't often see with this franchise. But now that he's coming into his own at age 27, I think he's in for a huge year.
If Alonso doesn't win a Gold Glove, which is his goal, that obviously won't shock me. But if he doesn't, it ain't going to be lack of trying. That guy is out there working religiously, and it shows on the field. How much better is Pete Alonso defensively at first base from when he first came up to today? Might as well be almost a completely different person. I remember when he first came up, the thought process was, man, if we could get the designated hitter in the National League, Pete Alonso is going to be one valuable asset. But he's a legitimate first baseman to the point where, we're not clamoring for Dom Smith to be the everyday first baseman and Pete the everyday DH. We're saying Pete's good at first base. You'll give him the days here and there. We'll DH or just get a day off. And you have Dom that could slide in and play a really strong first base in his absence. But Pete's a fantastic pick. He's one of the leaders of the team, like you said. And I definitely expect a big year and look forward to seeing kind of some more maturation at the plate, like you said, with the plate discipline, with taking those pitches and not feeling like he needs to put this entire offense on his back. And that's, that'll lead to more chasing the breaking balls away, because drawing a walk isn't going to do much if the guys behind you can't knock you in. And I think the Mets have a much deeper lineup that has them in a better position where it's okay, take those walks and you'll get driven in by Canna, by Escobar, by McNeil. And then at that point, people will subsequently have to start pitching new Alonso, because you don't want to just put him on. And that's when you go ahead and mash those 46 dingers.
All right, a friendly reminder, you're listening to the Mets Pod presented by Verizon. All right, let's close out with a couple topics here, Joe. Obviously, the most notable with this team that's not a fun one right now, and that's Jacob deGrom. Obviously, really disappointed. He comes into spring training. He looks like Jacob deGrom. Nobody can touch his stuff. He's obviously still throwing at a high velocity. He looks healthy. He feels healthy. He feels good. Didn't seem to be some kind of limit on deGrom. And then, of course, the shoulder injury comes along. He's going to be shut down for a month. Hopes to be back early summer. The timeline on these can be a bit, unpredictable. Maybe 4 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. And this is somebody that we've now seen, once again, little things pop up with deGrom. It's not just, one huge thing where he's been out for the year. It's a little thing here, missing a start, little thing there. The elbow, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he said if, the Mets were in the playoffs, he would have came back at the end of last year for that. So it's not even like he was entirely shut down if their season had continued on. How are we feeling right now, Joe? Like we've talked about it in length on this pod. This is a team that was built to survive this, but he is also somebody that can take you from being a borderline contender to a legitimate championship baseball team.
I mean, there's no question that Jacob deGrom is irreplaceable, right? The Mets are, we're talking about Tylor Megill and, maybe David Peterson gets some starts. Like those are the guys that you're talking about, which are really going to fit into the back end. So you're not replacing deGrom. Kind of to your point, where you're just trying to tread water. You need to stay competitive. I think they're much more prepared for these missed starts than they were last year. I mean, when deGrom missed those starts, there wasn't a Max Scherzer behind him. There wasn't a Chris Bassett behind that. So the Mets are in a much better spot to at least stomach this. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and try to paint you a positive picture of the Mets without Jacob deGrom. That'd be kind of silly. But at the same time, I think they can get through this stretch. Like you said, he's shut down for 4 weeks. Then, of course, he'll have to get more imaging, and we'll see, where it's at is if he can start a throwing program, and then he has to do that for a bit. I think optimistically, you're probably looking at or maybe around June 1st, because you have to have some minor league rehab starts after the throwing program. So it'll take a bit to get him back. But if you can get deGrom back in June, and you're able to tread water, whether you're in first place or a couple games out of first place, as long as the things don't completely fall apart, I think they'll be okay. But obviously, of course, it's a massive loss for the Mets, and there's no replacing him. They'll just have to find a way for a few weeks.
That's exactly right. So with that being said, Joe, looking at the next, biggest question in line, the lingering, the chain effect of this, deGrom out. When you bump everyone up, it doesn't look as much of a disaster, right? You go, oh, Scherzer's been an ace his entire career. On any other baseball team, Scherzer's your written in ink opening day guy. And then you have Bassett, number 2, and you go, okay, we're not worried about that. If you are in the glass half full approach of Carrasco or Walker, obviously Walker for all-star team first half last year, Carrasco traditionally, and a saying you always say, you are what the back of your baseball card says. And Carrasco is getting older. We're not denying that. But is Carrasco as bad as the guy we saw last year? There's no way it's even close to that. He just needs to get healthy, get right. He's using spring training to build up reps, and everybody's been really hard on him, and I understand it. But things did get better as it went on, especially his last start in spring. And then you have the wild variable, right? Do you think it is is there a surprise story here? Is that which he was last year, Tylor Megill? Look at David Peterson in 2020. Once again, another surprise story. That team had so many pitching struggles, and David Peterson kept them alive in a lot of games out of nowhere. Is there some kind of surprise storyline you hear that people go, okay, they've actually been able to stay afloat for, let's call it 6 weeks, to be fair, somewhere in the middle. Can one of those guys provide that, especially with the expectations of this offense? I think that's something a lot of people are overlooking is this is a team that, yes, they were supposed to be built on pitching in a sense, but they're not supposed to be just getting run over in terms of scoring runs. There is a lot of pop and a lot of speed now in this lineup.
It's definitely a different lineup construction. I think when they built this roster, they built to have a little less variance day to day and over stretches. Because, when you looked at the Mets lineup last year, there was a lot of thump in the lineup, but they would go through long spells of where nothing is happening. They got higher contact rate guys. They got guys that strike out at a below average league rate, or less than average. There you go. A below average league rate. And I think the offense is much more well equipped to be consistent. And that's really what they were looking to do, is get more consistent on that side of the ball. And then on the pitching side, like you said, we have Scherzer, we have Bassett. Those guys at the top of the rotation are really good. Then you have Taijuan Walker, who, if you could get, you don't even necessarily need all-star Taijuan Walker, but if he could be comfortably in between all-star Taijuan Walker and second half kind of not so good Taijuan Walker, that'll work. Cookie Carrasco, you need the bounce back, which I talked about earlier. And Tylor Megill, to me, is one of the most underrated players on the Mets 40-man roster. I think his upside is more than being a fifth starter. I won't be surprised if all things go well, that fans will be clamoring for Tylor Megill to stay in the rotation when Jacob deGrom returns. And who would that come at the cost of? That's sort of tough to say, but I won't be surprised if Megill makes that kind of impression over this, potential 2-month span.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he showed a lot last year. I think the fact that his mentality is fascinating to me. You see so many young guys come up with insane expectations, and pitching in New York, pitching in the big leagues, there's a lot there, and it takes a while for them to really get comfortable. And it's ironic with Megill. He's a guy that, and you could speak to this, obviously knowing the farm system and knowing the draft better than anybody that covers the New York Mets. There was never those kinds of expectations for him to come in and be a actual factor in a rotation. And, and all the spotlight has been put on him essentially out of nowhere. And he's almost embraced it in an ironic way where it's everything's just another game. I'm not going to get phased. I'm not going to get rattled. If I give up a run, I still have another batter. It's just a surprising route, is it not, where he's found himself compared to where he was projected to be?
Oh, this time last year, I was talking about Tylor Megill as a multi-inning reliever, kind of in the Seth Lugo mold. In the minor leagues, he was throwing two pitches, and now all of a sudden he's throwing four pitches. He's thrown two pitches that I hadn't really seen him throw in the minor leagues, and they're major league pitches. So I don't know exactly why he didn't throw all those pitches in the minor leagues, but I think McGill's a guy that he's ready to go. I mean, he's got ice in his veins. I think he's built for New York. Like you said, if he gives up a home run, he's not rattled. He's just on to the next batter. He's about his business. And, I know there's been some rumors that he could start on opening day if that were to happen on Thursday.
Didn't seem phased.
Yeah, didn't seem phased at all. He said it's just another game to him. So to me, I think Tylor Megill is ready to go. And I think Mets fans are going to see a little bit more from him this year. You saw some velocity uptick in spring. He was up to more 97, whereas last year he was topping out 95, 96. So he's added a tick or two to the fastball, really good slider, and the changeup is becoming a bit more of a weapon. So I am very excited to see what Megill can bring to the fold this year.
Yeah, we're excited. And talking about getting up to 97, I mean, this is a 6'7", 230-pound guy. So he can be a power thrower, and hopefully he starts to unlock that. All right, before we get to the mailbag, which obviously is usually our favorite part of the show, opening day is right around the corner. This is always a special week. It is absolutely a special week in Mets history. The Mets are, by winning percentage, the best opening day team in the majors, hovering right around a 650 winning percentage. And it's even funnier when you factor in, I believe they lost their first 8 opening day games in franchise history. So the kind of turnaround that they've had on opening day has been incredible. Joe, what's your favorite opening day memory, if you have one, for this franchise? This is always a really, really special day of the year around baseball.
So I'm not going to risk getting yelled at later. So I have to mention this. I don't really have much of a choice. So I actually met my girlfriend at opening day in 2013 at Citi Field. That's where we met. We just happened to sit next to each other at a 7-line event out in right center. I've been going to the home opener with my mom dating back to 2004. So every year we hit the home opener. In 2013, something came up with my mom at work, and there was just no way for her to get out of it. So I had 2 tickets, no one else to go with on kind of last minute notice. So I just was like, I'm not ending my streak. She could end hers. I'm not ending mine. So I went alone and just sat with the 7-line, and those are great people out there. So I had
a great time.
Yeah. So I had a great time. Everything was good. And yeah, I'd be yelled at if I did not mention opening day 2013 as my favorite memory.
Yeah, you were backed into a corner on that one. It would have been really rough if you said and Daniel Murphy hit like a 3-run home run.
That was the day that Colin Cowgill hit the grand slam, and the Mets absolutely destroyed. I don't remember who they faced that opening day, but they won like 11-2 or something like that. Padres. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was Colin Cowgill day.
The Mets have had some really random opening days. For me, it's not really a specific game in hand. I am a fan of the player introductions, especially when obviously this is different from when it's a home opener, but just the expectations that it brings, especially with this team. Even with the deGrom news, this is your first chance as a Mets fan to, see Max Scherzer truly, not just spring training, but in a big league game for your team. You're getting to see Marte, Canna, Escobar, on and on. The best opening days, and obviously for the Mets, winning makes the best opening day, but is when there's so much expectation from turnover of the roster, and this is truly a new era for the Mets. And yes, they signed some older players where a lot of people might look at it and go, they're in this 2 to 3 year win now window. I think with Steve Cohen owning this team, they will always be a win now approach team, but there's just a lot of excitement in general around the new faces meshing with guys that are really coming to their own. We've talked about Pete so much. We think Lindor is going to be much more comfortable here. It's not just, even if deGrom was healthy, but a guy like Megill that can be a gigantic difference maker in this entire team. So, with that being said, it is time for the mailbag. We never forget about the people, the listeners of the show, that honestly drive some of the best conversation on the show, and that's going to be the way it is on the Mets pod here. So, the first one, Joe, which was tweeted at you from Nathan Hirsch. This was a really interesting conversation that I'm sure is going to lead to a lot of debate amongst Mets fans throughout the entire season. He said, seems like Buck likes Nimmo in the leadoff spot and Marte hitting second. I think you can make a strong argument to have them flipped. I like giving Marte clear base paths, and Nimmo is every base stealer's dream because he can take pitches all day. Would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of that one from Nathan Joe? I think he makes a really sound argument right out of the gate.
Such a sound argument. And, with the mailbag, sometimes there'll be questions. Sometimes you could just make a statement that leads to a conversation. And I'll tell you, he's absolutely onto something. And I am the guy that has hyped up Brandon Nimmo as the leadoff guy for as long as you and I have known each other. But adding a guy like Marte, I think putting him leadoff makes a ton of sense. You put that speed on the bases. And like Nathan said, Nimmo's going to be patient at the plate, take some pitches, give him the opportunity to run and take second. And then Nimmo could, be aggressive and drive him in. Or if he works one of those walks where he gets the sprint down the first base, have first and second, nobody out. So I actually think Nathan has a great idea. I'm going with Marte leadoff, Nimmo second. I think I'm going for it.
I like it a lot. I think his argument just makes too much sense. I think there's a good balance between the two of what they do best. And the Mets, let's be real. They haven't, it's something I've argued for a while, and it's not easy to find because a lot of speed threats traditionally aren't always everyday players. They have a legitimate top of the order, whether it's first or second, guy in Marte that is a game-changing speed threat. It's how you steal runs. Think about all those games we watched when we were younger of Jose Reyes where finds a way on base. It could even be an infield hit. It could be beating out a ground ball. It could be a bunt hit. It could be a walk. It can be obviously a great hitter as well. And then you find a way to steal second base, and you can play small ball, or you can find a way to get him in third and hit a sac fly, something this team was terrible at last year, something they struggled with, situational hitting. Marte changes the dynamic of that, and I am a fan of get the man, not just the leadoff spot for what Nathan said about Nimmo taking pitches, which is a great point, but get the guy as many at-bats as you can. You went out and paid him that premium money for a reason. I would say get him up to the plate. So, Joe, I'll throw one out. I'll sneak in on the mailbag here because we could have done it in our predictions, but I think it's more fitting for the mailbag before we sign off here. This is a perfect question for you. Minor leaguer who gets called up and makes an impact. Doesn't have to be a prospect, although are there any prospects that could make this kind of impact?
I'll give you one on each side of the ball.
Fair.
So I'll go for the pitcher. Eric Orsi is a guy to watch. Yeah, he pitched in big league camp this year. So if you watch games, you've seen Eric Orsi pitch. In 2020, he was the Mets' 5th round pick out of the University of New Orleans. He's got obviously quite the off-field story as a guy that has actually beaten cancer twice already at his young age. So he's had quite the road to get here, but he made huge strides in 2021. He started in single A Brooklyn and made it all the way up to triple A Syracuse, all in his first professional season. Misses a lot of bats. He's a fastball that will touch 95, maybe 96 on occasion. But really his weapon is a splitter that if you watch spring, you saw that splitter just that falls off the table. I don't know that he necessarily has the upside to be a closer, maybe not even a setup man, but I think Eric Orsi is going to be a super valuable middle relief type of guy going forward. And I fully expect that you'll see him in Queens at some point this year. And then I'll bring a prospect in on the offensive side of the ball. How can we not talk about Mark Vientos and everything that he did in 2021? He had the most growth of any offensive player in the system in 2021. Prior, he was a guy that obviously had above average raw power, had some contact skills, the ability to barrel the ball up, but it was just not consistent. And in 2021, he made all the consistency in the world. His pitch recognition skills went up. His walk rate went up. Still gets strikeouts sometimes, which comes with power bats. But when you talk about power, it's him and Francisco Alvarez are the two guys in the system with the biggest power. And Alvarez is something else. We'll get into him, I'm sure, at a later date. But Vientos is a guy that I think could make an impact this year. If there's an injury or two, he's on the 40-man roster. He's going to be in AAA Syracuse. And he's a guy that could come up and, if you have to stick him at third base, he could stand there. He's getting some work at first and in left field as well. Designated hitter exists. So for me, I'll give you 2 to that. It's Eric Orsi as kind of maybe a lesser prospect per se. And then Mark Vientos, who I just recently ranked as the number 3 prospect in the Mets system in my latest top 20, which you could read over at SNY.TV. So Yeah, those are two to me. I don't think there's a ton of prospects that are going to make an impact in 2022. But when we have this conversation again next year, the list is going to be much longer.
And I'll say this, obviously a team that just traded Miguel Castro, like you said, could need, and I know they got a reliever in return for him, but more of a left-hander. They might need middle reliever help at some point this year. And if you're going to make an argument against anything on this Mets team right now, it's that they could probably use one more power bat, and that could be in the DH spot. That could be a corner outfield. Vientos, probably where he's projected to play at the next level if third base isn't going to be open. DH, corner outfield, and the name of the game for him is power. 25 home runs in minor league ball last year. 22 of them came at Double-A level as a 21-year-old. So that is significant power for his age, and that's how he's going to, make his mark in the majors. So exciting first show. Great to have all the new listeners here for the Mets pod, all of the old listeners that came with us over. We can't wait. We're going to do this every week, obviously every Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning, whenever you are ready to listen to your podcast. Stick with us right here at SNY. And a reminder to subscribe to the Mets pod presented by Verizon, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We'll catch you next week.